Welcome to Property Guide. You're watching ET Now. I'm Faye D'Souza. Thank you so much for tuning in. Now remember, on this show, we address any question you might have about buying a home and especially about any legal problem that you're having or you're facing with your developer. Write to us. Our email ID is at the bottom of your screen, and you can reach me personally on Twitter as well. In fact, on this show, we'll continue to address legal problems as we have our lawyer standing by. But before we do that, the monsoon session of Parliament has begun, and the controversial land acquisition bill, which is so crucial to the property market, is in the spotlight. As the Joint Parliamentary Committee has just gotten an extension until August first week to submit its first report, there's a political deadlock in the government, and the government has begun working on Plan B. What does Plan B look like? Let's take a look.
The monsoon session of the Parliament had a stormy start this week with repeated washouts. With all eyes on the contentious land acquisition bill, the centre is constantly drawing out plans to make the bill a possibility, but the political showdown in the Parliament is not helping. As the expiry deadline looms for the Joint Committee of Parliament to submit its report on the bill, it looks like the bill might be repromulgated for a staggering fourth time. So will the government be able to pass this bill in the session? Is another repromulgation on the cards? Even as we await a decision on this, the BJP has already proposed a Plan B in case the bill fails to get passed by the end of the monsoon session.
राज्य indefinitely उस कंसेंसस की प्रतीक्षा नहीं कर सकते, और अगर आप कंसेंसस से नहीं इसको पारित करवा सकते तो फिर केंद्र राज्यों पे छोड़ दे। जो राज्य तेजी से प्रगति करना चाहते हैं वो अपने स्टेट लेजिस्लेशंस इसमें सजेस्ट करे और केंद्र उन स्टेट लेजिस्लेशंस को अप्रूव करे।
This announcement came out soon after Prime Minister Modi chaired a Niti Aayog meeting and received suggestions from various state chief ministers on the bill. States suggesting legislation of their own and the centre approving it could serve as a boon for BJP-led states, but might be a bane to states led by Congress. So it's a wait-and-watch game to see whether the Modi government will finally be able to pass this contentious bill in this session, or if Plan B might be taken up.
But to help us understand what all of this will mean for the property market, which is what we're focusing on, we have Niranjan Hiranandani, who's the Managing Director at Hiranandani Group, and Om Ahuja, who's the CEO of Residential Property at Brigade Group, join us on the show. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. I shudder to use the phrase, policy paralysis, but it sort of feels like policy paralysis again, doesn't it? Because here you have a government who cannot reach a consensus. The ordinance is being renewed now for the fourth time. Niranjan, does it sort of feel a little bit like it did maybe 2 or 3 years ago?
No, I'm not so worried about the policy paralysis on the land bill alone. The question is not of the issues which are happening on the ground, in where we find that a lot of paralysis is more on the operations which are taking place. Let's talk about building approvals, just not happening. We thought those things would change even if the land bill didn't happen, if the regulatory bill didn't happen, at least we would have been able to get our building permissions early or on time. But unfortunately, all those things are going into long cause, and that's a big worry. Because even if the land bill was done, even if other things were done at the macro level, what happens at the micro level? We go for the purposes of building permission and they're just not happening. It's scary.
Well, Om, is that what it's like as well on your end? Because we know this is a government that's very, promisingly talking about housing for all. It's talking about affordable housing. But if small things like building permission, like land, and now the focus is turned to state governments, if these things are continued to be left to the state governments, is there any hope at all that anything will change?
Well, I would say subject of state government involving itself in terms of building approvals, there are a lot of initiatives which we would see would be very positive in terms of single window clearance. Many other aspects of this kind of thing should be addressed at this point of time rather than looking at land bill. Land bill, of course, will bring a lot of transparency, clarity in terms of large projects. But current challenge is keeping the cost in mind, keeping the affordability in mind. Various aspects of single window clearance will really help common man.
Okay, I want to bring both of your attention to the solution, one of the solutions that popped up, which is basically the government said that the issue of land, which is a state subject as of now, and the issue of making their own land acquisition laws will continue to remain with the state. Now, one of the questions that has popped up is simply this, that will this mean that BJP states will start to move faster, the other states will fall back? I want you to help our viewers understand what it means to each of us watching at our homes right now in the various states of this country. How do you expect all of this to play out, Niranjan?
I think Mr. Devendra Fadnavis is very proactive, and I'm sure he's going to bring about the amendments as requested by Mr. Modi very quickly as far as Maharashtra is concerned. Number two, I think he's angling for getting a lot of investment into Maharashtra, and unless he's not able to aggregate land quickly, I think there'll be a negative to that. And the third, I think the deficiency in terms of housing, which has come in the national housing policy, which the central government has stated, I think Maharashtra is really languishing in terms of the numbers. So I think the challenge to Maharashtra is very big, and Devendra Fadnavis will move fast. At least that's what he's promising. And very soon you're going to get a state housing policy come into it, and I'm sure that will be followed by a land bill at the state level.
But Niranjan, I mean, even if you just look at Maharashtra objectively at this point, if we look at what's going on in terms of job creation, in terms of infrastructure, I mean, just this week it rained again in Mumbai and everything came to a standstill. It does seem like, other states like, Bangalore, Chennai's just got a new Apple facility, Hyderabad is going to get IKEA. It seems like other states are moving faster.
Yes and no. I don't think that Mumbai is not moving. I think there is movement as far as Mumbai is concerned. But I think what the challenges in Mumbai has been is that at the grassroots level, the permissions are slower. So we do have a lot of customer demand as taking place as far as commercial space is learned. For instance, our company has done the largest ever in terms of commercial selling this year in my entire career. So I don't think, and I don't agree to tell you that Mumbai is not moving or the Mumbai region is not moving. But I do say that, yes, the other states are also competing well.
Well, Om, if we look at the concept the way it is right now of land acquisition, tell me from the point of view of the markets that Brigade functions in, where do you expect the impact to be felt the most? Because a lot of times when you look at projects that you're going to, work on in the future, have you taken into consideration these infrastructure corridors? And do you believe that these markets will now be hurt by the fact that land acquisition is obviously going to take a lot longer than we expected it to?
Well, I would say it may impact a lot more in terms of infrastructure, specifically when it comes to connecting Bangalore to Mysore, specifically when it comes to connecting Bangalore to Mangalore. But yes, the markets like Chennai, markets like specifically like Hyderabad, where we don't see challenges because the infrastructure is far more robust there. In terms of connecting Gift City to Ahmedabad, even that's more robust at this point of time. But yes, in terms of Bangalore, a lot of infrastructure projects within Bangalore, considering that Whitefield, metro connectivity to Whitefield, connecting metro to Electronic City, a lot of things will be relevant when it comes to land acquisition bill and the consent clause, as Mr. Hiranandani suggested. Social impact is going to get seriously impacted. A lot of projects have got implemented, provided there is a will and there is a way.
Well, I want to talk to both of you now about possible solutions, in that lie in front of the government at this point. If we look at land acquisition, I mean, if it continues to be a deadlock in Parliament, what happens to projects like the DIMC, for example, that's been touted as something that will bring a lifeline to the entire area that lies between Delhi and Mumbai? All of these big corridors, both for industry and for IT. Do you think all of that will come to a grinding halt?
I don't know whether it will come to a grinding halt, because I think the states will become proactive the moment you find that they realize that they need to do something about the bill. See, there are two parts to the land bill. The first is the compensation to the farmers or to the person to acquire the land. And the second is the speeding up the process in order not to go through dilatory processes. I think everybody agrees that the amount paid to the farmer should be higher. And I think there's a consensus on that. Where there is no consensus is the fact that you need to do it quicker. So I think the states which really want to get the results done will make the amendments wherein, though it may be difficult to get these bills passed at the central government, the states will do it.
Actually, Niranjan, I want to ask you this. Where do you stand on the removal of the consent clause and the social impact assessment, both of which have been knocked aside in this current format? You know, if it's rural infrastructure or it's a PPP, do you believe those two clauses should be brought back?
I do think it is possible to do the Delhi-Mumbai industrial corridor with having the consent of 70%. It's almost impossible to get it. So I don't think you'll be able to get it anywhere in the country because most of the time you won't be able to get consensus. So I think the clauses need to be removed because you're compensating them by adequate compensation. You can't change the corridor just because some people are not willing to surrender the land. I don't think it's a realistic move, so we will have to remove that clause, especially in the case of such acquisitions.
Well, you know, I'm sure both of you have studied the Coastal Road project, for example. That's going to require some amount of help from the land acquisition bill as well. Om, do you expect the Coastal Road in Mumbai to be stalled by the fact that the land acquisition bill has been stalled?
I would not agree because Coastal Road, as Mr. Hiranandani suggested, that is nothing to do with land acquisition as such. It is more a reclamation.
All right, we're going to take a very quick break, but when we come back, we'll sit down with both of our guests and we'll figure out what markets they believe will continue to thrive despite the political gridlock. That's on the other side. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. You're watching the Property Guide in ET now. Both of our guests are still with us. Om Ahuja joins us from Bangalore, Niranjan Hiranandani in Mumbai. Gentlemen, thank you for staying with us. We're talking about the land acquisition bill and the fact that it might not get passed in the monsoon session. The government there preparing to effectively renew the ordinance for the fourth time, waiting for a consensus in Parliament. We did talk about what this means for the larger sector, but I want to understand in terms of specific projects, in terms of neighborhoods that we're looking at as real estate investors, where does this hurt the most and what projects are likely to pass through without any sort of problems? Well, one of the things we've been discussing on the show of late is the Navi Mumbai airport and what it will mean for the economy of Mumbai and Navi Mumbai. Niranjan, I know you've been studying the Navi Mumbai airport quite closely. Now, while we do know the road, the Sion Panvel road has been broadened, I want to ask you about the people who are going to be displaced by that airport. In terms of land acquisition, where do you think the government is at this point and how much help were they hoping for from the land acquisition bill?
No, fortunately, as far as Navi Mumbai airport is concerned, almost 100% of the acquisition is completed. The last 10% which was remaining, the government has agreed to give them excessive compensation in terms of it, far in excess of what the land bill was proposing, and also give them land which is developed land to the villages. So I think Mr. Fadnavis has solved the land acquisition problem. So Navi Mumbai airport acquisition will not be affected by the land acquisition bill. And the road going from Sion to Panvel, the expressway, 10 lane, 5 lanes in each direction is already built. So Navi Mumbai airport, not a serious challenge.
Well, Niranjan, then answer me this question from the point of view of Mumbai. Where are you, most positive on? What neighborhoods are you bullish on? And you're going to say Thane because there's a lot of construction happening from the Hiranandani group in Thane. But if you were to look at the entire MMR region right now, where do you see the most promise?
I think I'll confirm with you that Thane looks very promising. Panvel looks even more promising with the Navi Mumbai airport and the Naina development which is being taken up, which is going to be twice the size of the whole city of Mumbai. And Alibag looks like becoming a tourist destination. If you go one of the weekends and go by boat from Gateway of India to Alibag, you can see thousands and thousands and thousands of people going by boat across there and also people going by road to Alibag. All in all, I think the Mumbai-Pune road looks very promising, but I think Thane, Panvel, Navi Mumbai, Alibag seems to be very promising.
Well, Om, I want to bring you in here on the DIMC, which is the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor. You'll have to change your hat and put on the one that analyzes the property market. I remember we talked about the fact there are several nodules on that entire corridor that are possibly going to profit from the economy that this corridor will bring. Now, even if land acquisition at the center is in some way, log-jammed, which it is, the states that will house the Delhi-Mumbai corridor, which is Gujarat, Maharashtra, Rajasthan, Haryana, are all BJP-led states. So it's likely that it will continue to move smoothly in all of these states, except for Delhi, which is not controlled by the BJP. What do you think, the main areas of promise will be alongside the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor? And will you still encourage investment on that route?
Well, I would say at this point of time, looking at the commitment of this government in terms of initiatives they've come out with, Make in India, lot more focus on manufacturing. So looking at that, Rajasthan seems to be more promising at this point of time, and specifically when you look at Jaipur and Alwar belt, that is a belt which is towards Delhi, and when we look at Gujarat, we are looking at belt between Ahmedabad and Surat.
All right, so Ahmedabad and Surat, Alwar and Jaipur. Niranjan, do you want to come in on the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor? How long do you think it's going to take for us to see it complete, and what areas alongside that corridor you think hold most promise?
I think the end part of it, which comes closer to the Jawaharlal Nehru port, is really going to pick up. And I think the last segment, which comes in from Gujarat right up to the port, is really being developed, and a separate corridor is being created. So alongside that corridor, you're going to see a lot of development taking place. But I think the ends are really more going to get developed near the ports. So that part of it really becomes a destination and will become a transshipment hub, because you'll have an airport there, you'll have the ports over there, and you'll have the railway line. So I think because of the transportation junction which is going to get created right at the end of the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor, I think that will be a segment which is going to really grow very, very fast.
Right, lots of interesting corridors to consider, but since we have both of you gentlemen here, and I'm being told we're running out of time, but I want a list from both of you, which is simply, if we use this platform now to communicate with the government and talk about what we need as an industry, what would that be? Niranjan, I'm going to come to you first. You did, of course, mention the fact that you would like faster permissions and actual action on that single window. But other than that, is there something that you would like to give the government as a message, saying this is what we need as an industry to make sure that we actually do have housing for all by 2022?
I think besides approval, which is the most important thing, I think the second part is to move the infrastructure faster. For instance, we are looking at the Pinjal River project, which is going to be 5 years down the line. I think if we could move it faster, it would be much more beneficial. The roads which we are talking about, the coastal roads, also the metro train in Mumbai, and of course the Cross Harbour Bridge and the Navi Mumbai Airport to be finally tendered. I think if this infrastructure really takes off, you're going to get just the infrastructure in Mumbai, and the Mumbai region development itself will increase the GDP of the country by 1%. So you're going to see huge developments taking place if all this infrastructure is in place, and it will lead to a secondary market which is second to none. Huge development which is unprecedented in this country, and we're not being used to seeing such large infrastructure taking place at one time. But it's possible to do so, and we look forward really to this happening very quickly in Mumbai region, which has been languishing for good infrastructure for many years.
Om, what's on your list there as a message for the government? What are the things you would like the government to look at first?
Two things from my side. One, it would be basically relook at the definition of affordable housing, because I guess today's world saying that affordable housing as a ticket size of X amount, that's become too low. And look at how RBI can benefit a common man in terms of increasing the benefit, both banking sector when they are lending towards affordable, in terms of priority sector lending. There are a lot of benefits which can be rolled out in terms of creating a right segment of affordable housing, which is not the case today. Second part of this discussion, I would say, is that need would be relook at taxes. A lot of significant amount of money today a common man pays when it comes to buying a new home. So it goes VAT, you have stamp duty, you have registration, you have service tax, a lot more things which are too heavy at this point of time for a common man to look at. Maybe there is a X amount of money, below that amount you buy a house, there is lesser amount of taxes.
All right, so take a close look at taxes, at infrastructure, and of course at the definition of affordable housing. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on the show. We look forward to having you back again very soon. Of course, on this channel and on this show, we'll be tracking the land acquisition for you very closely. If you have questions about anything you heard, feel free to write to us. Email ID is at the bottom of your screen. On the other side, Hemang Jariwala, our special advocate who specializes in property law, will join us to answer legal questions you sent in during the week. Don't go anywhere.